Tonight, a profound question ascends with the gentle curl of smoke from a flickering fire. Within the dimly lit room, where coals cast a faint orange glow, an ancient query, older than the very stones around them, begins to weigh heavily upon the collective consciousness. What if the narratives meticulously passed down through generations represent only a fragment of a much grander epic? Could it be that the crucifixion, often considered the definitive conclusion, was merely a deceptive veil? And what if a lineage, a direct bloodline, continued its journey, not just through the relentless march of time, but also across vast, unforgiving oceans, meticulously concealed within clandestine vessels, shrouded in an impenetrable silence, and safeguarded by solemn oaths too profound to ever be uttered aloud? The air, subtly perfumed with the scent of charred oak and the sweet resin from the hearth, seems to carry, for those willing to let their imaginations wander, a faint, almost ethereal trace of myrrh, that venerable perfume once presented as a gift in a sacred cradle. Shadows, elongated and distorted, stretch across the walls, taking on the appearance of silent conspirators, leaning in closer, eager to absorb every unspoken word. They sit together in this hushed, expectant circle, daring to voice inquiries that society often deems forbidden. Could it truly be that the descendants of Jesus traversed the earth, not as mythical figures, but as beings of flesh and bone? Certain traditional historians unequivocally dismiss such propositions, firmly maintaining that the canonical Gospels provide a complete and final account, and that bloodlines simply cannot endure the brutality of crucifixion. They express a distinct preference for their historical manuscripts to remain meticulously ordered, their margins devoid of any potential scandal or unsettling revelations. Yet, a dissenting chorus of others quietly, even uneasily, contends that significant lacunae persist, and that the very presence of silence in itself is inherently suspicious. After all, they argue, history is not an unyielding stone edifice, but rather an intricate mosaic riddled with absent pieces. What if one of these conspicuous voids is not a mere oversight, but an intentional omission, a deliberate design? It is a well-established historical fact that the Knights Templar were formally constituted in the year 1119. These 9 men were bound by sacred vows to safeguard pilgrims journeying along the perilous routes to Jerusalem. This constitutes the widely accepted, mainstream historical record, meticulously etched into ancient chronicles. However, a more intriguing suggestion, whispered beneath these official narratives, posits an alternative motive, that their excavations were not solely for the purpose of ensuring safety, but for unearthing something profoundly hidden beneath the hallowed grounds of the Temple of Solomon. This elusive treasure could have been gold, sacred relics, or perhaps even ancient genealogies. A particularly dry scholar once acerbically remarked that such theories served as a luxurious indulgence for those with an overly active imagination. Yet, upon closer reflection, this statement can be interpreted as an elegantly veiled admission that even he possessed no definitive means to refute them. The subtle creak of aged wood beneath their feet seems to echo through the silence, as if the very floorboards possess memories far more profound than they are capable of divulging. In some ancient narratives, the Templars are depicted as having transported invaluable parchments to distant locales, places where the vigilant gaze of the papacy could not possibly penetrate. There are even persistent claims, alternately dismissed and defended, asserting the existence of detailed maps of Western lands long before the voyages of Columbus, carefully entrusted to individuals who valued profound secrecy far above fleeting fame. Some contemporary historians continue to engage in fervent debates regarding the veracity of the Norse sagas concerning Vinland, questioning whether they represent reliable historical accounts or merely imaginative campfire poetry. Nevertheless, as the gathering acknowledges this very night, poetry itself frequently encapsulates truths that prove far more enduring than codified law. One might momentarily envision a knight, his beard still smudged with soot from a long journey, silently entering a secluded chapel at the first hint of dawn. He reverently bows before the altar, but concealed within his sleeve, meticulously folded, lies a genealogy. These are names that, if ever brought to light, would assuredly destabilize monarchies and precipitate the downfall of entire crowns. He murmurs a prayer, perhaps half out of ingrained habit, the other half serving as a form of spiritual insurance. One can never be too cautious when the very cargo they bear is eternity itself. A faint smile plays on their lips at this evocative thought. After all, what conceivable need could knights, sworn to a life of poverty, have for such a multitude of treasure chests? Certainly not for mere coin. Perhaps secrets, in their purest form, represent the only true wealth that remains impervious to the corrosive effects of time. And yet, paradoxically, secrets also constitute the sole currency capable of bringing about utter ruin the very instant they are spent. The fire crackles, sending a solitary spark arcing into the dimness. It hovers for a fleeting instant, a golden beacon, before extinguishing itself, serving as a poignant reminder of how swiftly revelations can ignite and then dissipate. Tonight, the focus shifts away from the official chronicles and instead gravitates towards the margins, the subtle stains, and the carefully erased lines where the tendrils of imagination are permitted to weave their way through. For it is often within the ashes that the faint yet discernible outline of an entirely different narrative begins to glow. Perhaps it signifies nothing of consequence, or perhaps, just perhaps, it signifies everything. What if these ancient bloodlines, against all odds, did indeed traverse the vast expanse of the sea? Perhaps they arrived disguised, not as regal monarchs, but as humble farmers, astute merchants, or even fervent rebels, who chose to construct barns rather than unfurl banners. Wouldn't it be entirely characteristic of history to cloak its most perilous heirs in the most unassuming of garments? And so, as the hour grows late and the coals gradually diminish, the gathering steadfastly clings to the profound question. It does not demand an immediate answer this night. It merely asks to be softly whispered into the encroaching darkness. What if the lineage did not truly terminate? As the night deepens, so too do the shadows upon the walls, seeming to draw closer, as if what is to be revealed next is intended not for the world at large, but solely for those present. The question has been posed, and now the intriguing trail truly commences, in the faded ink of ancient parchments, in maps that defy conventional historical timelines, and in drawings of lands situated far beyond the meticulously drawn boundaries of medieval geographical understanding. One might vividly conjure an image of a subterranean chamber beneath the ancient city of Jerusalem, where the very stones are damp with the residue of centuries of fervent prayers and profound silence. The year is the 12th century, The Templars, those enigmatic knights bound by austere vows of poverty, yet possessing coffers richer than many kings, are diligently excavating in the dust of the site where Solomon's temple once majestically stood. Historical accounts factually confirm their occupation of this sacred precinct for nearly a decade, from 1119 until approximately 1129. Officially, their mandate was to protect pilgrims. Unofficially, however, rumors circulated with the ethereal grace of incense smoke. Some whispered of their quest for sacred relics, others for invaluable manuscripts, and a few even murmured of scrolls containing maps that extended far beyond the mythical pillars of Hercules. Herein lies the crux of the scholarly contention. Did the Templars, in their clandestine excavations, unearth knowledge pertaining to lands situated across the vast Western Sea? Mainstream historians, with polite skepticism, dismiss such notions. They firmly assert that the true age of discovery commenced many centuries later, ushered in by the intrepid Portuguese caravels and the formidable Spanish crowns. And yet, the fringe theories stubbornly persist, often pointing to a disparate collection of ancient maps that appear to possess an uncanny prescience, revealing too much, too soon. Coastlines meticulously rendered before any known explorer officially claimed them, shapes strikingly resembling continents that were, at the time, entirely undiscovered. Are these mere coincidences, or are they profound echoes of a secret knowledge meticulously preserved and transmitted? A particular map immediately springs to mind: the enigmatic Vinland charts, purported to be medieval depictions of America's distant shores. Some scholars readily dismiss them as ingenious forgeries, while others vehemently argue that their intricate detail could not possibly have been conceived without direct observation. Cartography, a professor once declared in a lecture, is fundamentally a science of accuracy, not of imaginative fabrication. One might suspect, however, that he had never encountered the marginalia of a medieval monk who, with earnest conviction, drew whales larger than ships and was, remarkably, still taken seriously by his contemporaries. The subtle, dry, and earthy scent of vellum, touched by the vanished hands of countless centuries, fills the mind. One can almost picture a Templar, in the flickering glow of a torchlight, carefully unrolling a parchment, a coastline meticulously traced in faded brown ink. Perhaps it depicts the familiar edge of Ireland, or perhaps it is something far more profound. A jagged, unfamiliar shore, impossibly wide, impossibly long, stretching endlessly into the vast, unknown Atlantic. He gazes at it, uncertain whether to truly believe what his eyes behold. Maps, after all, are both promises of discovery and intricate riddles to be deciphered. The irony of the situation resonates deeply. An order born in the sacred confines of the Holy Land may have cast its gaze westward, towards lands they could never openly acknowledge. Imagine the profound implications of presenting such a chart to the Pope, who already harbored a deep-seated mistrust of their secretive nature. Would he have denounced it as heresy, or even worse, perceived it as a formidable challenge to his authority? Some theories provocatively suggest that the Templars, facing imminent exposure, deliberately chose exile over revelation, their silence serving as a protective cloak far more impenetrable than any chainmail. And there is a certain dark humor in the scenario as well. Monks, meticulously drawing fantastical dragons upon uncharted seas, inscribing the ominous warning, "Here be monsters," while perhaps the true monster was the unsettling possibility of an entirely new continent awaiting discovery beyond the known horizon. One can almost discern the faint, wry chuckle of a knight as he muses on the profound irony: a formidable beast to the west is surely preferable to the all-too-familiar beasts to our east. History, it seems, has never been entirely devoid of its own subtle sarcasm. In imagination, one traces a finger across those faded lines, feeling the slight indentation where a quill once pressed too firmly. Could these ancient maps have truly been the genesis of voyages undertaken long before the celebrated expeditions of Columbus? Some historians continue to engage in fierce debates, questioning whether the Norse sagas of Vinland genuinely document transatlantic crossings, or are merely captivating tales spun to entertain within their mead halls. And yet, the enigmatic, rune-marked, and weathered stones discovered in Newfoundland persist, continuing to tantalize with their silent presence. Thus, the enduring theory lingers that the Templars, following their devastating dissolution in 1307, did not merely transport gold and sacred relics aboard their fleeing vessels, but also invaluable knowledge, detailed maps, precise coordinates, and instructions whispered in an arcane code. Perhaps these represented the last true treasures of the temple. Not ornate chalices or revered crosses, but rather a definitive direction, a beckoning horizon, a silent promise that somewhere beyond the tumultuous waves lay an ultimate sanctuary. And here, the powerful image returns. A solitary knight at dawn, standing on a ship's deck, his gaze fixed westward, clutching a rolled parchment tightly to his chest, his beard now salted with sea spray, his eyes fixed not upon the rising sun, but upon the profound darkness it leaves in its wake. He remains uncertain if the distant land is real, yet he knows with absolute certainty that the map is all he has left. Sometimes, true faith resides not in sacred scripture, but in the indelible marks of ink. The fire in the room sighs contentedly and settles into a softer glow. The gathering, too, leans back, inhaling the subtle, comforting scent of smoke. A map, after all, is merely an invitation. The true journey, the profound adventure, lies in whether one dares to follow its silent call. The night deepens further, and in the collective imagination, sails begin to billow with an unseen wind. One can almost discern the mournful groan of rigging, the rhythmic slap of canvas, and the persistent creak of hulls laden with far more than mere timber. The compelling question of the maps naturally leads to the vast expanse of the sea, and to the ships that may have carried not only tangible treasure, but also profound, unsettling truths. The undeniable fact remains, on Friday the 13th of October, 1307, King Philip IV of France issued a royal decree for the arrest of all Templars. Their revered leaders were seized and their immense wealth confiscated, or so the official historical record meticulously claims. Yet the enduring legend insists otherwise. At the port of La Rochelle, numerous witnesses recounted tales of ships silently slipping away under the concealing shroud of a dense fog. Certain historical academics contend that these accounts represent mere embellishments, a medieval iteration of hearsay exchanged in hushed tones to dispel the stillness. Nevertheless, a contingent of other scholars emphasizes that the Knights Templar commanded a formidable naval contingent, an exceptionally rare asset for an ecclesiastical order. The perplexing query then arises: what became of this impressive armada? The vast expanse of the ocean has a propensity to obscure answers with greater alacrity than any consuming flame. Herein lies one of the most enduring and contentious historical debates. Were these vessels destined for the rugged shores of Scotland, where King Robert the Bruce, then excommunicated, desperately sought allies and support? Or did they venture even further, navigating across a formidable ocean that very few mariners in that epoch dared to traverse? Conventional historical perspectives dismiss such notions as utterly fanciful, frequently citing the immense navigational complexities inherent to the 14th century. Yet a cadre of revisionist historians offers a counter-argument, reminding the public that Norse explorers had successfully navigated these very waters centuries prior, leaving behind a rich legacy of sagas and archaeological remnants. If a sturdy Viking longship possessed the capability, they posit, why not a more advanced Templar galley? In the mind's eye, the very air itself acquires a sharp, saline tang. One can almost discern the pungent aroma of tar and pitch, interwoven with the musty scent of damp hemp ropes. Lanterns, suspended from lofty masts, would have swayed rhythmically, casting an erratic play of luminous halos across the pallid, apprehensive countenances of the crew. Concealed somewhere within the depths of the ship's hold, perhaps a substantial chest lay secreted, wedged securely amidst barrels brimming with grain. This receptacle, one surmises, would not have been laden with cumbersome coinage, for such a treasure would be too heavy, too conspicuously obvious. Rather, its contents might have comprised sacred relics, ancient parchments bearing cryptic inscriptions, vital names, and intricate genealogical records. Should these whispered hypotheses possess any substantive merit, one of these concealed lineages could potentially trace its origins back to the humble son of a carpenter, a figure who once traversed the sun-baked, dusty thoroughfares of Galilee. There is an almost poignant, lyrical quality to the idea that the venerable custodians of such a profound bloodline might ultimately entrust its safeguarding to the boundless sea, arguably the most impartial and merciless of all potential guardians. One finds it impossible to suppress a wry smile at the profound irony of the situation. These formidable men, who had valiantly contended with Saracen armies and challenged powerful monarchs, were ultimately reduced to a precarious negotiation with the caprices of waves and wind. A knight, accustomed to the clang of steel, could adeptly parry a sword thrust. But what defense could one possibly mount against the overwhelming force of a raging tempest? Perhaps their only recourse was fervent prayer, hoping against hope that the precious bloodline they bore was imbued with a buoyancy greater than mere bone. A segment of popular lore suggests that these ships ultimately reached the shores of Portugal, where the surviving remnants of the Templar Order quietly assimilated into the burgeoning Order of Christ, an entity that would, in later centuries, significantly influence and guide intrepid explorers such as Prince Henry the Navigator. Conversely, other hushed tales insinuate that the fleet embarked on a westward voyage, ultimately disappearing without a trace into the immeasurable vastness of the Atlantic. There even circulates a peculiar narrative, part jest and part prophetic whisper, recounting how a lone fisherman in Newfoundland once adamantly swore he discovered a cross meticulously carved into a sheer cliff face, its features weathered by time, but undeniably distinct. His spouse, however, remained thoroughly unimpressed, prosaically informing him that it was merely a natural fissure in the rock. Matrimonial bonds, after all, are often less tolerant of the embellishments of legend. The academic community, as is their wont, naturally engages in heated debate. Some scholars passionately assert that the Templar fleet was never, in its initial conception, of the prodigious size often claimed. Others, however, steadfastly maintain that its sudden and complete disappearance is far too neatly conclusive to be dismissed as mere happenstance. A particularly erudite, though somewhat austere, academic once penned the maxim that the absence of records does not imply the presence of secrets. This assertion, while superficially appearing remarkably astute, loses some of its intellectual luster upon the realization that it simultaneously provides an exquisitely convenient rationale for the deliberate concealment of such clandestine information. One closes one's eyes and endeavors to visualize the breaking of dawn, a soft, ethereal light illuminating the eastern sky. A stately procession of ships, their majestic sails emblazoned with the distinctive red cross, glides inexorably towards the distant horizon, their prows gracefully cleaving through the undulating, gray Atlantic swells. Behind them, the kingdom of France smolders with the embers of suspicion and the bitter sting of betrayal. Ahead, there awaits nothing but an impenetrable shroud of fog, an emblem of profound uncertainty. Somewhere within the cavernous holds of those vessels, there might lie secreted the most perilous enigma of all, not glittering gold, nor meticulously drawn maps, but rather the very perpetuation of a sacred bloodline, a lineage that no reigning crown of the era dared to openly acknowledge. The ancient timbers of the ships groan under the strain, seabirds wheel gracefully overhead, and the wind, fortuitously, catches the sails with precise efficacy. The entire fleet then imperceptibly slips into the realm of legend, while the annals of conventional history, with a polite yet firm gesture, turn their gaze in another direction. Yet in the quiet hours of the night, one remains acutely aware, discerning the faint, spectral echo of oars dipping into the water and the soft, almost imperceptible whisper of ships as they vanish at the very cusp of dawn. The fire within the hearth now dwindles to a lower glow, and the passage of the hour feels markedly slower, as if time itself inclines its ear to listen intently. Observers have, through the power of imagination, followed ancient maps and phantom ships across vast oceans, and now, in this mental voyage, their feet seem to crunch softly upon unfamiliar distant sands. The very atmosphere in this imagined locale possesses a distinct character. The crisp scent of salt air mingles harmoniously with the resinous fragrance of pine. This shoreline presents a stark contrast to the familiar Mediterranean coasts that the Templars once knew so intimately. The central enigma persists. Did they, in fact, truly arrive here? That question remains the profound riddle. Tonight, one metaphorically traverses these forgotten shores, quietly pondering whether the boots of those ancient knights ever pressed into soil where no official chronicler subsequently ventured. Mainstream historians, predictably, dismiss such notions as utterly fanciful. No tangible evidence, they declare with the unshakable conviction of individuals who prefer their historical archives meticulously ordered and devoid of ambiguity. Nonetheless, upon the ancient stones of New England, peculiar carvings endure. These petroglyphs, some passionately attest, unmistakably bear the distinct form of crosses, not the crude, hastily etched marks of shipwrecked mariners, but rather the elongated Latin cross, a symbol so deeply revered by the crusading orders. A few discerning eyes perceive the faint etching of shields, while others discern the unmistakable outline of swords. Still others, with a dismissive chuckle, contend that Lycan is a more accomplished artist than any medieval knight could ever hope to be. And so the perpetual argument persists, much like the ceaseless ebb and flow of the ocean's waves. Is it irrefutable evidence, or merely an accidental formation, a deliberate design, or the capricious work of erosion? A particularly renowned controversy perpetually swirls around the edifice known as the Newport Tower in Rhode Island. For many, it is simply a colonial windmill, a structure of plain utility and practical design. However, for a select group of fringe enthusiasts, it stands as a medieval chapel, its distinctive arches seemingly whispering tales of ancient world masons and the arcane principles of sacred geometry. The very proportions of the structure, one enthusiastic amateur historian proclaims, resonate with the unmistakable touch of the Templar hand. Professional scholars, however, merely offer a knowing chuckle, sagely noting that colonial farmers, too, possessed a fundamental understanding of how to meticulously stack stones. Perhaps, in a curious twist of fate, both interpretations hold a kernel of truth. Perhaps a farmer's utilitarian mill can, indeed, subtly hum with the faint, lingering memory of a clandestine mass once performed within its walls. One permits one's thoughts to wander yet deeper into the verdant fringes of the forest. The rich, earthy aroma of damp soil ascends, and the pine needles underfoot offer a soft, yielding cushion. And then, etched into the unyielding granite, a fleeting glimpse of a mark appears, a cross, faint and profoundly weathered, almost entirely consumed by the encroaching moss. Is this mere happenstance, a product of natural forces? Or could it represent the quiet, almost imperceptible footprint of a knight who, in an act of profound purpose, wished to leave behind a trace of proof, yet not so overtly as to invite condemnation? Such a subtle, ambiguous gesture would be entirely characteristic of the Templars, to leave behind evidence that, paradoxically, is not truly evidence at all, a cryptic riddle, a hushed whisper, a stone that demands a greater measure of belief than it does of mere visual confirmation. And here, a delicate vein of humor playfully surfaces. One might vividly imagine a weary knight, after arduous months at sea, carving his sacred mark into the unyielding rock with utmost solemnity, only for a passing beaver to casually gnaw it away decades later. History, it is imperative to recall, harbors no intrinsic sympathy for intentions, however noble or profound. It concerns itself solely with what demonstrably survives the relentless march of time. Some scholars continue to vigorously debate whether the Kensington runestone, discovered in Minnesota, is an authentic artifact or an elaborate deception. Its enigmatic inscription purports that Norse explorers were present in the year 1362, a full century prior to Columbus's documented voyages. Nevertheless, certain fringe voices cautiously suggest that this artifact could also subtly hint at a convergence of Templar esoteric knowledge with the adventurous wanderings of the Norse. The mainstream academic community, predictably, bristles with indignation, declaring impossible. Yet the realm of the impossible is, perhaps, the most fertile ground for the unfettered human imagination. One cannot help but experience a faint smile at the profound irony. Colonial children in bygone eras once played innocently near the Newport Tower, utterly oblivious that their carefree games were being enacted within the very heart of a swirling historical controversy. For them, the structure was neither Templar nor farmer's mill, but simply an excellent locale for an engaging game of hide-and-seek. It appears to be a consistent truth that history's most profound and perplexing riddles are frequently overlooked by those who reside in closest proximity to them. The nocturnal air grows perceptibly thicker, and the crackling of the fire softens to a more subdued murmur. Upon these forgotten shores, one traces not merely fleeting footprints in the sand, but also indelible marks in stone, in the persistent threads of rumor, and in the enduring fabric of oral tradition. Perhaps these traces are nothing more substantial than the ethereal shadows of wishful thinking. Or, conversely, perhaps they are precisely what they appear to be: the faint yet tenacious imprints of an order that resolutely refused to succumb to annihilation, pressed indelibly into the very fabric of a land that was never, in the grand scheme of things, supposed to know their presence. The ocean waves, with a gentle hush, recede into a quiet whisper. The stars above intensify their brilliance, and for a fleeting moment, it feels as though those ancient boots still tread silently beside the observer, their profound silence resonating with a power far greater than any written chronicle could ever hope to convey. The night air grows dense with the pervasive scent of pine and the rich aroma of damp soil, and one steps deeper into the primeval forests of this new world. The vast ocean now lies behind, a distant, sighing presence, and all around, the towering trees ascend, like the majestic pillars of an unseen, natural cathedral. Their dense needles create a profound hush against the whispering wind, and their ancient branches creak softly overhead. If the Templars genuinely set foot upon these shores, their paramount objective would undoubtedly have been the pursuit of sanctuary, the establishment of concealment, and perhaps the discovery of a place where they could perpetuate the practices that had always fundamentally defined their order. Not the clamor of battles, nor the accumulation of material wealth, but rather the solemnity of their esoteric rites. It is a well-documented historical fact that the Templars faced severe accusations during their infamous trials in 1307, charges that included the practice of secret rituals, the whispering of clandestine oaths in the flickering glow of candlelight, the exchange of symbolic kisses in hallowed places, and the veneration of strange and unconventional icons. Mainstream historians are quick to remind observers that the vast majority of these accusations were, in all likelihood, coerced confessions extorted through brutal torture and overwhelming fear. Yet, the persistent nature of these specific charges, the allegations of strange rites and hidden ceremonies, compels one to ponder a profound question. Did these mysterious practices truly vanish into oblivion with the forceful suppression of the order? Or did they perhaps scatter like resilient seeds, ultimately taking root in unexpected and fertile new soils? Some clandestine whispers suggest that deep within the vast American woods, these very same rituals found an echo. That sacred bread was broken not within the confines of established churches, but in secluded clearings. That consecrated wine was sipped from chalices, hastily carved from the wood of maple trees. That prayers, far older than the nascent colonies themselves, ascended reverently towards the towering forest canopy. Could the soft carpet of pine needles have, in this new context, served as their altar cloth? Could the gentle rustle of the wind through the branches have effectively replaced the soaring voices of a traditional choir? One imagines the faint, wavering glow of a lantern swinging gently in the profound darkness of the night, illuminating a hushed circle of weary men. These individuals bow their heads, not in deference to Rome, nor to any earthly king, but to something far more ancient and enduring, a sacred bloodline, an unbreakable vow, a profound and meaningful silence. Of course, the academic community dismisses such romanticized notions with a collective chuckle. No tangible evidence, they reiterate, sagely pointing out that every early settler and pilgrim, by necessity, offered prayers in the wilderness, and that candlelit gatherings in that era were hardly so uncommon as to definitively prove anything remotely clandestine. Nevertheless, there persist hushed whispers of enigmatic symbols discovered carved into the bark of trees, crosses intricately twined with serpents, and other marks that bear a striking resemblance to those etched into ancient Templar chapels across Europe. Some argue that these are nothing more than simple initials carved by lovesick colonists. Others, however, steadfastly insist that they represent profound emblems, meticulously carried across a vast ocean. The dispute itself lingers like a wisp of smoke, thin, evasive, and utterly impossible to grasp or definitively contain. There is also a subtle vein of quiet humor present in this scenario. One might vividly imagine the profound solemnity of knights, clad in their full, heavy armor, kneeling reverently beneath the dappled shade of pine branches, only to have their sacred ceremony abruptly interrupted by the curious antics of a raccoon, rummaging nonchalantly at their very feet. Holiness seldom acclimates itself to its immediate environment, and perhaps therein lies its profound appeal. Sacred rituals relocated to alien terrain, appearing ungainly yet consecrated, much like a devout warrior stumbling over a gnarled root during a moment of profound supplication. Beyond the conventional narratives, speculative hypotheses insinuate that some of these clandestine Sylvan ceremonies integrated with the indigenous spiritual observances, suggesting that emblems traversed not merely vast oceanic expanses, but also distinct cultural tapestries. There are those who contend that the serpentine deity venerated within specific indigenous worldviews intermingled with the distinctive vermilion cross of the Templar order, producing a composite insignia, half ancient European, half nascent American. Orthodox scholars express considerable skepticism, often with audible dissent at such notions. But still, one is prompted to consider if the imperative for perpetuation necessitated discretion and silence. Would the Templars not assimilate, integrate, or even obfuscate their practices? Rituals, after all, are remarkably malleable. Faith is nothing if not ingeniously resourceful. The scent of sap is pungent and invigorating to the olfactory senses. One hears the gentle cadence of a nearby stream, aqueous currents gliding effortlessly across ancient stones, evoking hushed supplications. The open glade appears to illuminate within the mind's eye, as if lit by invisible luminaries. One can almost discern the profound utterances, solemn pledges of concealment, of vigilant protection, and of unwavering allegiance, not to a pontiff who had ultimately forsaken them, nor to a monarch who relentlessly pursued and persecuted them, but to a covenant predating the very establishment of monarchies, perhaps even to a hereditary succession possessing a gravitas surpassing the collective authority of all European regalia. Certain historical scholars continue to engage in rigorous debate regarding whether clandestine fraternities prevalent in nascent America, such as the Venerable Order of Freemasons, resonate with vestiges of Templar ceremonial practices. The congruities present a compelling indication. The distinctive emblems, the ritualistic greetings, and the esoteric principles of sacred architectural design. Academic authorities generally relegate these resemblances to mere happenstance. Nevertheless, when seemingly random concurrences accrue with notable frequency, they tend to assume an uncanny resemblance to deliberate configurations or underlying designs. One settles into a profound stillness now, heeding the ambient sounds of the sylvan expanse. The towering conifer trees rustle their branches, as though privy to ancient secrets. Their slender acicular leaves tremble gently, their elongated umbras stretch across the forest floor, and beneath them, in the profound tranquility of the nocturnal hours, one can almost feel it. The profound burden of sacred rites transported over vast oceans, concealed within the arboreal canopy, and meticulously safeguarded through generations of unspoken accord. The embers of a dying blaze emit a subdued crackling sound in the background. But for this fleeting interval, the encompassing woodland serves as a sanctified place of worship, a natural sanctuary. The profound tranquility of the sylvan setting continues to resonate within one's auditory perception, and now the emblematic representations begin to emanate a subtle, ethereal luminescence, the cruciform and serpentine motifs intricately interlaced, resembling disparate linguistic systems discovering a shared lexicon. Symbols, after all, are the most enduring and pervasive voyagers. They traverse geographical demarcations with greater facility than military forces, infiltrating intricate engravings, distinctive insignia, and oral traditions in environments where fragile written records would inevitably perish. And in the nascent continent, there are hushed conjectures suggesting that the distinctive Templar cross did not persist in isolation. Instead, it encountered and engaged with the potent serpent motif. As a matter of historical and cultural record, the serpent has held profound veneration as a sacred entity throughout the American continents for millennia. From the sinuous, winding contours of the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, extending for an impressive expanse exceeding 1,000 linear feet, to the revered feathered serpent deity Quetzalcoatl, prominent in Mesoamerican mythology. The symbol embodied attributes of formidable strength, profound sagacity, inherent peril, cyclical regeneration, and enigmatic profundity. The cross, meanwhile, was the preeminent device of the Christian faith, but specifically of the Knights Templar, vividly rendered in crimson upon a pristine white field, austere, resolute, a tangible manifestation of a sacred pledge. That the two might intertwine initially appears to defy logical expectation. Yet, in the dynamic interplay of cultural contact, symbolic representations do not merely clash, rather, they intricately interweave and coalesce. Certain heterodox hypotheses propose that when ancient voyagers from the Old World, whether they were Norse explorers, Templar emissaries, or other unidentified sojourners, encountered indigenous populations, they did not seek to obliterate existing traditions, but instead fostered a process of integration. The serpent and the cross commenced occupying a shared visual domain on lithic engravings and carved wooden effigies. Those inclined to doubt summarily dismissed these visual traces as erroneous interpretations, attributing them to nothing more than incidental abrasions erroneously perceived as miraculous phenomena. Nevertheless, these compelling narratives endure, and much like the relentless constriction of a serpent's coil, they resurface repeatedly, gaining additional intensity and conviction with every reiteration. Imagine it, an open glade illuminated by the flickering glow of a central conflagration, where indigenous patriarchs and alien chevaliers engage in a rudimentary exchange of gestures and symbols. One indicates the sinuous form of the serpent, while the other points to the distinct shape of the cross. At first, it is an initial, somewhat ungainly dialogue, conveyed through a blend of emblematic representation and unspoken understanding. Gradually, however, their meanings begin to converge and coalesce. Both parties comprehend the inherent symbolism of the serpent's ecdysis, its periodic shedding of skin. Both understand that the cruciform emblem denotes both mortal demise and subsequent rejuvenation. The concept of spiritual awakening encounters the principle of cyclical reemergence. Distinct global perspectives, represented by their respective insignia, arrive at the realization that they are not adversarial entities, but rather kindred spirits. A certain degree of ironic amusement also presents itself within this scenario. One can readily envision a chivalrous warrior, characterized by his earnest demeanor and grave solemnity, endeavoring to elucidate the significance of the Crimson Cross through intricate manual gestures, only to be met by an indigenous patriarch, reciprocating with comparable gravity regarding the serpentine motif. While each, in their private thoughts, might harbor a suspicion concerning the other's sanity, it becomes apparent that even the most potent symbols necessitate interpretive mediation. Certain historical scholars continue to engage in rigorous debate regarding whether the monumental serpent mound predates the advent of European contact by several centuries, or if it ever experienced any external cultural imprint. Archaeological investigations have firmly established its construction date to approximately 1000 CE, a period significantly preceding the eventual demise of the Templar order. Impossible, mainstream academic perspectives adamantly assert, for any chronological or cultural intermingling to exist. Nonetheless, proponents of alternative theories articulate a rejoinder should a colossal serpentine effigy already be present upon the landscape. Would not newly arrived chevaliers have perceived within it a profound consonance with their own esoteric doctrines? Did they themselves not safeguard arcane knowledge pertaining to a serpent motif? Indeed, the enigmatic entity known as Baphomet, a figure often associated with subtle serpentine characteristics, was invoked during their infamous inquisitorial proceedings. The metaphorical flame of imaginative conjecture subtly wavers. On one conceptual flank, the ancient and indigenous serpent undulates with primal grace. On the opposing side, the cross, resplendent in crimson, shines forth, bearing the historical weight of Jerusalem's hallowed soil. And situated between these powerful emblems lies an expansive realm of potential, a profound intermingling of traditions. It is conceivable that any depictions of interlaced cruciforms and Ophidian figures are merely serendipitous occurrences. Alternatively, they may constitute tangible proof of a profound cross-cultural discourse that has long since faded from collective memory. One discerns a subtle, wry amusement in the inherent paradox. Individuals who, in Europe, faced accusations of venerating unorthodox effigies might have discovered in the vast expanse of the Americas a more ancient serpentine motif awaiting them, a resonance that rendered their alleged heterodox practices almost comforting and familiar. If survival necessitated the amalgamation of emblematic representations with sacred pledges, perhaps it was a pragmatic imperative rather than a theological transgression. The characteristic aroma of pine continues to permeate the atmosphere, but now a distinct olfactory nuance emerges. The acrid yet inviting scent of sun-baked stone, and the earthy, herbaceous fragrance emanating from ancient geoglyphs, predating even the oldest recollections. One pauses reflectively before these monumental constructions, these sinuous earthen formations and profound emblems of spiritual conviction, and ponders the true authorship of their original configuration or their subsequent modification upon the arrival of foreign sojourners. The serpentine form elegantly coils, the cruciform emblem stands resolute, and within their convergence one perceives the tantalizing prospect of an undisclosed familial bond. For if emblematic representations possess the capacity to intricately interweave, then perhaps ancestral lineages are also capable of such profound commingling. One's journey now leads to a secluded valley, nestled intimately amidst undulating hillocks, where the ambient illumination descends in delicate auriferous shafts, piercing through the ethereal mists and the dense arboreal canopy. Within this serene locale, an edifice of such unassuming proportions and inconspicuous character stands that it risks complete oversight. A simple, unembellished wooden chapel, its portals seasoned by the elements, exhibit a venerable curvature indicative of extensive temporal passage. No inscription adorns the lintel above its entryway, nor does any commemorative tablet proclaim its genesis. Nevertheless, one perceives its palpable aura, a subtle yet persistent intimation that it safeguards a profound secret, hidden from conventional scrutiny. Historically, it is well documented that early European colonists frequently erected rudimentary chapels on the burgeoning frontier, serving to delineate nascent settlements and facilitate solitary religious observance. However, this particular sacred structure possesses an undeniable, distinctive ambiance. Its foundational timbers exhibit an antiquity that transcends the span of typical colonial recollection. The fasteners, meticulously hand-wrought, betray a craftsmanship indicative of methods that had largely receded from common practice by the middle of the 17th century. Certain speculative narratives posit that its construction might be attributed to the progeny of Templar knights who had escaped widespread persecution, carrying with them not ostentatious regimental standards, but rather an enduring spiritual conviction and perhaps arcane knowledge necessitating clandestine preservation. The precise provenance of the edifice remains a subject of ongoing scholarly contention, with some academics maintaining that it represents nothing more than an ingenious replication by pioneering inhabitants seeking to mimic established European architectural trends. Nonetheless, its distinctive angles and the nuanced geometrical precision within its construction appear purposefully calibrated, almost imbued with a ceremonial exactitude. The interior atmosphere is redolent with the venerable scent of seasoned pine and the delicate fragrance of beeswax, subtly sweetened by the lingering vestiges of extinguished candle emissions. Ambient illumination permeates through diminutive, asymmetrical fenestrations, casting dynamic, rectangular patterns across the well-trodden flooring. Within this hallowed space, the demarcation separating the consecrated from the concealed becomes remarkably indistinct. It is conceivable that a clergyman once officiated over Holy Mass within these walls, or alternatively, Perhaps individuals exchanged hushed vows across surfaces laden not with sacramental bread, but with ancient scrolls of parchment. One's mind readily conjures the image of a knightly figure, humbly genuflecting within the enveloping shadows, his head respectfully inclined, his heart resonating with the profound onus of an ancestral line whose very existence remained unknown to the wider world. An element of understated humor resides within its very unpretentiousness. Beyond its unassuming exterior, a nimble squirrel scurries across the worn steps, utterly oblivious to the accumulated centuries of clandestine preservation. A small avian creature chirps melodiously from the rafters, as if playfully deriding the gravity of human machinations. Even edifices consecrated with the utmost reverence are not immune to the incursions of everyday banality. It is conceivable that this very phenomenon constituted a deliberate stratagem employed by the Templars to remain concealed overtly, safeguarded by an unassuming demeanor, and preserved by humanity's intrinsic predisposition towards inattention. Certain peripheral theories propose the existence of subterranean vaults beneath the chapel's foundations, purportedly sealed through the application of long obsolete ceremonial practices. Orthodox historical scholarship, however, dismisses such claims as pure fabrication, a concoction born of popular myth and hopeful speculation. Nevertheless, subtle currents of air percolate through narrow fissures in the wooden flooring, imparting a distinct chill and an unyielding persistence, as if providing an elusive indication of concealed voids beneath. Is it plausible that these hidden compartments once safeguarded sacred artifacts, crucial historical documents, or indeed the very continuity of the Templar bloodline? One inclines oneself towards the floorboards, vividly envisioning the subtle grating sound of concealed portals and perceiving the aroma of ancient timber and accumulated dust, accompanied by the exhilarating sensation of an arcane truth meticulously guarded in unspoken accord. A quiet, knowing chuckle escapes one's lips at the contemplation. The notion of a Templar sepulchre inadvertently concealed beneath a chapel so diminutive as to be easily confused with a mere utilitarian outbuilding. It is conceivable that the original knights themselves would have savored such a profound paradox. Profound and significant mysteries safeguarded by unpretentious wooden structures, clandestinely situated in overt view, precisely where suspicion would least likely alight. Indeed, historical progression seldom bestows its accolades upon the conspicuous or the flamboyant. Instead, it tends to favor the persevering and the discreet. Certain historical scholars continue to contest the proposition that these remote frontier chapels might have encompassed anything beyond the conventional routines of parochial existence. Conversely, other researchers, piqued by the enigma, draw attention to subtle engravings etched into the timber. These markings include cruciform shapes, stellar motifs, and even sinuous serpentine patterns, all bearing a striking resemblance to ancient Templar heraldry and symbolism. Is their presence merely an accidental alignment of circumstances, or do they represent deliberate communiques meticulously placed for the discerning few who might, in a distant future, possess the insight to perceive them? Perhaps they are akin to subtle, almost imperceptible markers scattered within the vast, intricate wilderness of history, intended to guide those with an insatiable curiosity for the extraordinary and the unlikely. A sensory tapestry unfolds, where the crisp, resinous aroma of pine needles subtly interweaves with the deep, grounding fragrance of damp soil. As the ambient illumination gracefully glides and transforms within the confined space, a vivid mental tableau emerges, transporting the observer to a moment of hushed reverence, perhaps envisioning oneself bowed in quiet contemplation beside a gently wavering candle flame, its light casting dancing shadows. Beyond the walls, the expansive valley seems to hold its breath in a profound stillness, as though the very edifice of the chapel were engaged in an act of deep, silent audition. This sanctuary, bereft of a formal designation and often bypassed by casual observation, nonetheless possesses an intrinsic and irrefutable importance. Its significance stems not from any overt proclamation or boisterous declaration of its past, but rather from its subtle, almost imperceptible murmurs, which are only discernible to those who possess the patience and inclination to draw near and truly absorb its silent narratives. Retreating a few paces, one is afforded a broader perspective, encompassing the entirety of the scene, a humble chapel, devoid of any official appellation, yet paradoxically brimming with an ethereal chorus of unseen voices, saturated with the echoes of bygone eras and laden with recondite truths. These secrets do not manifest through conventional linguistic articulation, but rather through an palpable aura of historical presence, through the nuanced art of meticulous scrutiny, and through the profound, almost tangible gravity of that which has been diligently preserved and that which remains deliberately obscured. Having departed from the hallowed confines of the chapel, the journey continues into expansive, verdant fields where ancient stones are strewn across the landscape, resembling the fragmented, enigmatic punctuation marks of a narrative yet to be completed. Some stand erect, defiantly reaching towards the heavens, while others lie prostrate, having succumbed to the inexorable passage of time. All are enveloped in the ethereal, lustrous embrace of dusk's gentle, argent illumination. Within this sprawling expanse, an observer might discern and follow the inherent geometric patterns embedded within the topography, noting the subtle, almost imperceptible alignments that resonate not with the pragmatic concerns of agriculturalists or the precise calculations of cartographers, but rather with the esoteric understanding of those who interpret the cosmos through the language of celestial bodies and arcane emblematics. The legendary rose line, a concept once murmured clandestinely within the labyrinthine avenues of Paris, now appears to emit a faint, resonant vibration that traverses the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, its essence subtly conveyed through the interplay of shifting chiaroscuro, indelibly etched into ancient lithic structures, and meticulously preserved within the collective consciousness of historical recollection. From a purely verifiable standpoint, the Paris meridian, occasionally imbued with the evocative and romantic epithet of the rose line, originated in the 17th century, conceived primarily for precise astronomical observations, its invisible trajectory bisecting the city along a strict north-south axis. Nevertheless, a rich tapestry of conjecture and esoteric interpretation has persistently woven itself around this line, suggesting deeper, more archaic significance that predates its scientific establishment. Certain proponents of these theories posit that the Knights Templar and various other clandestine fraternities of antiquity deliberately employed pre-existing alignments of hallowed precincts, venerable cathedrals, and sacred sepulchres as sophisticated mnemonic devices, or perhaps as an intricate cipher designed to safeguard and transmit recondite information pertaining to ancestral lineages, spheres of influence, and prescient prognostications. Conventional historical scholarship frequently issues admonitions against attributing deliberate intent to mere happenstance, contending that many perceived alignments are either products of natural geological processes or simply fortuitous occurrences. Despite this academic skepticism, the resonant echoes of these alternative interpretations continue to reverberate, manifesting in hushed oral traditions, enigmatic cartographic depictions, and meticulously calculated spatial relationships. Upon these expansive American plains, one can vividly conjure the image of megalithic structures positioned not through random chance, but by the diligent and precise efforts of skilled artisans, their sculpted edges meticulously oriented to greet the nascent sun at the zenith of the solstices. Furthermore, the interplay of light and shadow might reveal the deliberate design of one monolithic sentinel casting its elongated silhouette across another, forming an intentional and meaningful configuration. It is conceivable that the descendants of the Templar order, or perhaps other early colonists who meticulously guarded esoteric knowledge, replicated on this new continent the ancient patterns previously established in Europe. A subtle, unspoken homage to the profound principles of geometry, the intricate science of astronomy, and the pervasive influence of the unseen realms. Certain speculative theorists ardently maintain that this arcane practice persisted, finding sanctuary within the veiled rites of Masonic fraternities, manifesting as deliberate linear markings inscribed upon the very fabric of the landscape, intended not for the accumulation or exercise of temporal authority, but rather for the enduring preservation of historical recollection. A subtle, almost poignant irony permeates this historical conjecture. The very individuals who faced accusations of theological heterodoxy, often depicted as conspirators engaged in clandestine machinations within subterranean crypts and venerable ecclesiastical structures, may have, in fact, transported their profound preoccupation with geometric precision and inherent cosmic order to a nascent continent utterly unacquainted with their presence or their esoteric traditions. While these enigmatic figures meticulously calibrated the trajectories of the sun, charted the constellations of the nocturnal firmament, and deciphered the shifting patterns of shadows, the average pragmatic colonists likely grappled with a persistent bewilderment regarding the idiosyncratic arrangement of these seemingly arbitrary stone formations. A faint, knowing chuckle might escape one's lips when envisioning a colonial pioneer, perplexed and perhaps a little exasperated, murmuring under their breath, "To what conceivable end would someone array these stones in such an anomalous fashion? It must surely be the product of some profound derangement." Simultaneously, one can almost picture an unseen, clandestine hand curling into a quiet, satisfied smile within the enveloping obscurity. The invigorating aroma of freshly turned soil ascends, subtly commingling with the delicate, ephemeral fragrance of wildflowers that have established their tenacious roots amidst the ancient stones. One's fingertips might trace the weathered contours of sculpted rock, its surface softened and abraded by the relentless attrition of wind and precipitation, yet still retaining the unmistakable precision of its original, intentionally crafted angles. Certain linear configurations discernible within the landscape might indeed suggest nothing beyond the realm of pure fortuity. However, other arrangements, upon closer and more discerning examination, seem to subtly insinuate a profound and deliberate underlying intention. The ethereal trajectory of the rose line extends, an unseen yet undeniably pervasive presence, spanning the vast geographical distances between continents, its silent resonance conveying a profound narrative of recondite knowledge meticulously safeguarded through intricate and intentional design. Academic discourse frequently engages in spirited debate concerning whether the discernible geometric patterns evident in various American archaeological sites, such as the enigmatic Newport Tower or the diverse indigenous earthworks, signify a direct influence stemming from Old World traditions, or represent instances of independent, autochthonous cultural evolution. A segment of the scholarly community summarily dismisses such proposed intercontinental linkages as purely chimerical or product of overactive imagination. Conversely, other astute observers, discerning delicate yet persistent consistencies, venture to speculate that an esoteric understanding of geometry and hallowed alignments might have indeed been conveyed across the ocean with the clandestine migrations of early European secret societies. Perchance the underlying impetus for these intricate designs was less concerned with the assertion of territorial dominion or the acquisition of temporal power, and more profoundly rooted in an act of enduring remembrance, meticulously tracing the delicate, invisible filaments of ancestral lineage, unwavering spiritual conviction, and profound devotional adherence. One can vividly conjure a nocturnal tableau, the unsteady, dancing glow of a torchlight casting ephemeral shadows across a serene meadow, illuminating a solitary figure kneeling with profound concentration over a megalithic stone. This individual is depicted meticulously incising lines into the pliable earth, precisely calibrating angles with the tautness of a string, and softly articulating prayers or solemn vows in an almost inaudible murmur. It is plausible that a cruciform emblem might be found in precise alignment with the silhouette of a remote hill, or that a perfectly inscribed circular demarcation could subtly mirror the sweeping, parabolic arc of the distant horizon. These diminutive, almost imperceptible actions, discernible only to the most vigilant and perspicacious observers, coalesce into a silent, arcane lexicon of clandestinity, meticulously transmitted from one generation to the subsequent, ensuring the enduring legacy of hidden knowledge. And in this intricate tapestry of historical speculation, a vein of gentle humor quietly emerges. The very hands that so meticulously and solemnly calibrated the positions of these sacred stones might well have, in a moment of earthly distraction, inadvertently caught on an exposed root or stumbled clumsily upon uneven terrain, eliciting not pious supplications, but rather muttered imprecations directed not towards the divine, but squarely at the immutable forces of gravity. Indeed, even the most hallowed and divinely inspired designs remain susceptible to the petty caprices and mundane imperfections of the terrestrial realm. As the solar orb descends towards the western horizon, casting progressively elongated shadows, the resonant echoes of the rose line persist, extending across these ancient stones and over fields that might appear barren or unremarkable to an unobservant gaze. Here, the profound disciplines of geometry, unwavering spiritual conviction, and guarded secrecy inextricably intertwine, forming a delicate, almost imperceptible conduit spanning from the venerable continent of Europe to the nascent landscapes of the New World, silently conveying the profound assurance that the annals of antiquity are never truly extinguished, provided one possesses the sagacity to discern their subtle manifestations and the insight to interpret their hidden narratives. As the lingering twilight gracefully yields to the encroaching darkness of night, the journey continues along a slender, winding pathway, artfully delineated by the imposing silhouettes of venerable oak trees. The ambient air becomes palpably dense, suffused with the earthy, verdant fragrance of moss and the rich, decaying aroma of fallen leaves. Within these secluded, tranquil vales and ensconced, unassuming homesteads, reside generations of families who have diligently safeguarded their recondite knowledge and traditions, eschewing any form of public acclaim, grand architectural tributes, or formal historical documentation. They embody the essence of silent custodians, meticulously preserving cherished relics and arcane narratives that the broader world has, over the expansive sweep of centuries, deliberately elected to consign to oblivion. While it is an unequivocally substantiated historical fact that European settlers routinely transported diminutive devotional articles, cherished literary works, and sentimental mementos across the vast oceanic expanse, a select cohort of families, distinguished by their extraordinary fastidiousness, maintained a collection of artifacts and observed a repertoire of traditions that exhibit an uncanny, almost startling congruence with ancient Templar practices. Intricately carved cruciform symbols, cryptically encoded journals, and sacred chalices bearing distinct and enigmatic markings. Orthodox historical scholars tend to discount these anomalies as mere eccentricities, perceiving them as nothing more than sentimental vestiges of a populace yearning for the familiar comforts of their distant homelands. Conversely, proponents of fringe theories interpret these same objects and customs as vibrant, unbroken strands of an enduring ancestral lineage, offering subtle yet compelling corroboration that the Templars' profound legacy persisted in quiet clandestinity, woven into the very fabric of ostensibly unremarkable existences. One might momentarily suspend reality to envision the intimate interior of a humble, unassuming farmhouse. The subdued, wavering glow of candlelight gently shimmers and dances across rustic wooden shelves, selectively illuminating a burnished brass cross, a meticulously folded parchment, and a diminutive, intricately carved serpent figure. The rich, venerable aroma of aged oak timbers subtly intermingles with the ephemeral scent of candle smoke. A delicate, almost imperceptible trace of lavender might also permeate the air, perhaps emanating from dried sprigs carefully placed between the leaves of ancient texts, intended to counteract the pervasive mustiness that accrues with the relentless passage of centuries. One can almost perceive the faint, rhythmic creaking of aged floorboards as a child, utterly oblivious to the profound and hallowed heritage lying dormant beneath their innocent steps, playfully traverses the room. This scenario presents an irony intricately layered upon the very fabric of history itself. It is a recurring paradox that the most recondite and momentous secrets frequently find their sanctuary within the most unassuming and inconspicuous environments. A segment of these silent custodians may have received their ancestral rituals not through formal instruction, but as hushed, almost imperceptible directives, time-honored traditions transmitted without spoken words, passed from a parent to their offspring. The methodology is so understated, so disarmingly pragmatic, that it almost borders on the comically ingenious. There is no necessity for the laborious memorization of intricate scrolls, nor the performance of elaborate ceremonial rites. A mere fleeting glance directed towards a particular emblem, or the utterance of a specific phrase at a precisely opportune juncture, suffices to ensure the unbroken continuity of the lineage. Academic experts frequently engage in profound deliberation regarding the efficacy of such understated practices in meaningfully safeguarding historical veracity. Nevertheless, these persistent, often anecdotal narratives continue to circulate, subtly yet resolutely challenging the meticulously ordered and often simplified chronicles presented in conventional historical textbooks. A distinct vein of humor presents itself when one envisions an elder fastidiously correcting a younger descendant. No, the cruciform emblem must incline ever so subtly to the left, lest our venerable ancestors perceive our inattention. While the child, only partially convinced, may surreptitiously roll their eyes, the very act of preserving this secrecy subtly transforms into an intimate domestic ritual, a quiet, almost playful act of defiance against the perceived apathy of official history. It is conceivable that the Knights Templar themselves, with their penchant for arcane symbolism and meticulous organization, would have found a certain resonance in this intimate domestic theater. Admiring the ingenious and careful orchestration of ostensibly ordinary lives transformed into vigilant custodians of ancient traditions. Further extending the realm of speculative thought, fringe theories posit that certain American families meticulously preserved these relics, not solely out of profound religious piety, but with the more recondite objective of safeguarding tangible evidence pertaining to ancestral bloodlines purportedly connected to the figure of Christ himself. Mainstream historical academics unequivocally dismiss such assertions as utterly unsubstantiated and fanciful. Nevertheless, the enduring ubiquity and persistent recurrence of specific iconographic elements, such as cruciform designs inextricably intertwined with serpentine motifs, intricate coded numerological sequences, and the painstaking preservation of ancient manuscripts, irresistibly beckon one towards deeper inquiry and intellectual curiosity. One might gently glide fingertips across the polished surface of an intricately carved wooden chest, its texture rendered smooth and lustrous by the repeated touch of countless hands over many decades, thereby experiencing a palpable sensation of profound historical continuity. Even should the artifacts themselves be perceived as utterly commonplace or devoid of intrinsic grandeur, the underlying intention behind their preservation remains undeniably deliberate, representing a subtle yet resolute act of defiance against the relentless march of oblivion. These unassuming custodians, remaining largely anonymous and unheralded by the broader world, dedicate themselves not to the construction of grand monuments, but to the meticulous preservation of memory itself. And yet, paradoxically, within their profound silence, resides an unparalleled and peculiar richness of historical import. A solemn toast shared during a prosaic family repast, a hushed phrase murmured within the soothing cadence of a lullaby, a subtle mark meticulously incised into the corner of a wooden table. All these seemingly mundane gestures are transmuted into profound acts of enduring faith. They represent diminutive miracles, sustained and perpetuated precisely because their understated nature allows them to escape the scrutiny of casual observation. At times, one is led to ponder that the most significant triumph of the Knights Templar was perhaps not their military prowess on the battlefield or their immense material wealth, but rather their extraordinary, almost preternatural capacity to impart upon others the intricate and subtle artistry of silent, clandestine endurance. Chom. As the nocturnal veil descends with increasing profundity, the leaves rustle softly in the burgeoning breeze, and somewhere within the encompassing darkness, a solitary candle flame flickers valiantly against the encroaching wind. Within that tenuous luminescence, one can almost palpably sense the enduring presence of those who meticulously safeguard that which resists facile categorization, the intricate threads of lineage, the profound depths of esoteric knowledge, and the intimate, cherished recollection of a world that the dominant currents of historical narrative have consistently endeavored to disregard. The journey concludes as one follows the sinuous course of a narrow river, gracefully meandering through the ancient lands, its surface mirroring the celestial moonlight in shimmering argent ribbons. The accompanying sound is a gentle rhythmic murmur, an almost primordial lullaby, predating the very establishment of the settlements that now fringe its venerable banks. A pervasive belief holds that rivers are conduits of profound historical memory, and on this particular night, the observer willingly surrenders to the silent guidance of this waterway, allowing it to navigate through the unseen, intricate currents of bygone eras, subtly imparting tales of intrepid travelers, displaced exiles, and profound secrets that, with an indomitable resilience, steadfastly refuse to be submerged by the tides of time. Historically, waterways proved indispensable to the very fabric of early colonial existence, serving as vital conduits for transportation, essential arteries for irrigation, and fundamental sources for survival. Yet, beyond their practical utility, these sinuous rivers also afforded a crucial element of concealment. Unorthodox theories posit that descendants of the Knights Templar, purportedly fleeing the intense persecution that followed their order's suppression, may have strategically utilized these intricate river systems. Their clandestine journeys, undertaken with the utmost discretion, involved navigating unseen through dense forests and expansive wetlands, carefully transporting precious relics and vital records, all while meticulously ensuring no telltale sign of their passage remained. Within academic circles, considerable debate persists regarding the existence of any tangible physical evidence corroborating such extraordinary peregrinations. A segment of scholars outright dismisses this notion, vehemently citing the pervasive absence of any officially documented records or verifiable archaeological finds. Nevertheless, the hushed whispers of these possibilities endure, as resilient and unyielding as the perpetual flow of the river itself. One might instinctively pause, inclining an ear to the ambient sounds. The water gently laps against the verdant banks, the delicate reeds shiver in a barely perceptible breeze, and a majestic heron, with an unhurried grace, lifts its broad wings, casting ephemeral shadows that dance and quiver across the shimmering surface of the water. It is conceivable that, untold centuries ago, a modest vessel might have silently drifted along this very stretch, its hull heavily laden with sturdy chests containing ancient parchments, an assortment of coins, and subtle, enigmatic symbols, all emblems of a hidden, enduring lineage. Perhaps the occupants of this craft offered fervent prayers not solely for their immediate physical safety, but for the profound and continued survival of a bloodline whose revelation possessed the potential to fundamentally destabilize reigning monarchs, or at the very least, to irrevocably shatter a comfortably established historical narrative. A subtle vein of humor quietly permeates the imaginative landscape. One can almost vividly picture a stoic knight, perhaps a little weary, murmuring to his companions, "Exercise caution with that oar, lest we inadvertently spill the entirety of our family's most guarded secrets into these waters." Even as the river itself seems to playfully conspire, teasing them with unpredictable currents and sudden mischievous gusts of wind. Indeed, even the most profoundly serious and meticulously planned missions appear to perpetually flirt with the unpredictable tendrils of chaos. History, it often seems, takes a peculiar delight in its own private, unfolding jest. Certain historians steadfastly maintain that the narratives surrounding these concealed river passages are nothing more than romanticized exaggerations, products of fanciful storytelling. Yet, in stark contrast, local legends, faithfully transmitted through generations, recount specific details, unusual markers etched into trees, peculiar arrangements of stones, and discreet alcoves along the riverbanks, where small boats could vanish from sight with remarkable ease. Advocates of fringe theories propose that these landscape features were not coincidental, but rather deliberately placed to serve as a guide for a chosen few, forming a clandestine cartography subtly interwoven into the very fabric of the natural environment. The rich, earthy scent of damp soil rises, gracefully intermingling with the delicate, fresh aroma of wild mint that flourishes along the water's edge. One imagines a clandestine ritual unfolding at the break of dawn, prayers softly intoned, chalices of wine passed reverently from hand to hand, a sacred line of descent affirmed not with the fleeting stroke of ink, but with the profound, unwavering power of shared intention. The river, in its ceaseless flow, carries this silent devotion, blending the essence of water and the weight of memory in equal, profound measure. And within this simplicity lies a compelling irony. The immense, formidable expanse of the Atlantic Ocean proved ultimately incapable of concealing the Knights Templar from their pursuers. Yet, paradoxically, a relatively narrow river, winding discreetly through the landscape, may have provided the perfect sanctuary for their preservation. Survival, it appears, often favors the unassuming, the patiently enduring, the quietly resolute, and frequently, the entirely overlooked. One finds oneself following the glistening water as it reflects the moonlight, imagining its intricate path leading to other hidden enclaves, to secluded cabins and forgotten chapels, to families who bear the profound weight of lineage and the solemn burden of secrecy, all without ever committing a single detail to written record. The river itself seems to speak in soft, murmuring tones, carrying stories within a current that predates conquest, antedates the earliest maps, and is older even than human memory itself. And within that gentle whisper, one profoundly senses the palpable presence of continuity, that delicate, invisible thread meticulously connecting the distant past to the unfolding present, safeguarding secrecy to ensure survival, and binding unwavering faith to profound silence. As the river gradually narrows and begins to twist its course, the gaze is drawn toward the low-lying hills that majestically rise, standing like ancient, watchful sentinels along its meandering banks. Beneath these gently sloping elevations, some whisper, lie hidden vaults, meticulously carved chambers of stone, their entrances ingeniously disguised by clinging moss, intertwining roots, or the natural, unassuming curvature of the earth itself. It is recounted that these subterranean repositories once safeguarded objects of immeasurable importance, sacred relics, invaluable manuscripts, and perhaps even irrefutable proof of a lineage specifically intended to remain forever unseen by the scrutinizing eyes of both kings and popes. Historically speaking, various European cultures routinely constructed subterranean chambers, serving diverse purposes such as secure storage, strategic defense, and occasionally the performance of sacred rituals. The Knights Templar, renowned for their exceptional architectural prowess, were certainly no strangers to the intricate art of vault construction. Fringe theorists propose that a number of these Templar vaults successfully endured the perilous journey across the Atlantic, subsequently repurposed or ingeniously concealed by their descendants within secluded valleys of the New World. Mainstream historians, however, remain deeply skeptical, asserting that there is a complete absence of any physical evidence to substantiate the existence of such alleged New World vaults. Yet, it remains an observable truth that the mere absence of concrete evidence seldom succeeds in quieting the human imagination, particularly when rumor flows with the relentless and pervasive persistence of a river. One steps lightly over the moss-covered ground, conjuring in the mind's eye the distinctive scent of damp stone, the earthy, musty tang of deep soil, and the faint, metallic aroma of long-forgotten, perhaps rusted, locks. The surrounding air feels cool, imbued with an almost reverential quality. Perhaps a sturdy chest rests far below, meticulously carved from resilient oak and reinforced with bands of iron, its contents deemed more precious than gold, not for their intrinsic material value, but for the invaluable knowledge and the sacred bloodline they so steadfastly protect. Some narratives suggest that the Templar vaults contained an array of maps, letters, and codices that meticulously detailed journeys defying conventional historical accounts, voyages largely unrecorded in official chronicles, yet carefully preserved through generations of meticulous secrecy. There is a subtle, almost wry humor in contemplating the extraordinary care undoubtedly taken to conceal such invaluable treasures. One can vividly imagine a dedicated knight painstakingly measuring angles, perhaps muttering under his breath about the precise way moss should cover certain corners, only for a curious deer to accidentally dislodge a loose stone, thus sending the entire, carefully laid plan spectacularly awry. Indeed, even the most vigilant guardians of profound secrecy were ultimately subject to the unpredictable whims of nature, which so often reserves the final, knowing laugh. The scholarly debate concerning the very existence of these vaults continues unabated. Are they tangible historical realities, or merely elaborate myths born of collective anxiety and enduring legend? Some historians contend that any references to hidden Templar vaults are merely retrospective inventions, a clever amalgamation of European Romanticism and the robust tradition of frontier storytelling. Fringe theorists, conversely, counter these arguments with anecdotal reports detailing strange depressions observed in hillsides, curious cavities discovered beneath ancient chapels, and tunnels whose intricate masonry unmistakably bears the hallmark of old-world craftsmanship. The truth in this intricate narrative remains stubbornly elusive, perpetually teasing at the very edges of plausibility. One imagines a descent down narrow, rugged stairs, carved directly from the living rock, the faint echo of one's footsteps immediately swallowed by the profound darkness. Candlelight, a solitary beacon, flickers against ancient walls etched with enigmatic symbols, crosses, stars, serpents, and perhaps it is precisely here, in this hallowed space, that the unbroken continuity of a hidden lineage is vigilantly preserved. Each symbol serves as a quiet yet potent reminder that secrecy possesses the remarkable capacity to endure not only through the fragility of paper and the spoken word, but also through the deliberate, painstaking creation of physical space. Meticulously crafted in stone and enveloped in shadow, the distinct aroma of melting candle wax gracefully merges with the cold, unyielding stone, creating a palpable, almost tactile reminder of unwavering devotion, enduring patience, and the quiet, ceaseless vigilance required to preserve such profound knowledge. Humor again subtly resurfaces, dry and understated. A Templar, perhaps utterly exhausted by the monumental effort, might have sighed deeply, muttering, "If only we could train these infernal mice to carry our letters," even as the unhelpful rodents scampered irreverently around their feet. Even amidst the most meticulous and comprehensive planning, life invariably finds its own idiosyncratic ways of improvising. Some scholars continue to dispute the very plausibility of New World vaults, while others, more intrigued, suggest that the distinct architectural footprints, the precise alignments of stones, the presence of subterranean spaces, and the evident care taken in their concealment strongly hint that something truly extraordinary was, in fact, hidden. Perhaps it is not so much the material object itself that holds paramount importance, but rather the profound intention behind it, the unwavering dedication to preserving a lineage, a body of knowledge, or a sacred ritual that, for compelling reasons, cannot be openly acknowledged or expressed. One steps back from the imagined vault, the surrounding hills now enveloped in a profound silence, the river murmuring its ancient song nearby. Within their quiet, resolute concealment, these vaults, whether they exist in tangible reality or merely within the realm of imagination, powerfully embody the enduring resilience of secrecy, the unwavering patience of their guardians, and the persistent whisper of a bloodline that steadfastly refuses to vanish into oblivion. Beyond the gentle undulations of the hills, one's path leads into a tranquil clearing, where sunlight once dramatically pierced the dense canopy, now softened into a sublime, dappled gold. Here, one discerns the faint, subtle impressions of activity from a long-vanished past, weathered stone markers, barely perceptible worn paths, and slight depressions in the soil that subtly hint at gatherings that were both deeply solemn and profoundly secret. If the Knights Templar indeed left any discernible trace within the vast expanse of the New World, it might very well manifest in such understated, almost imperceptible gestures: seals carefully pressed into warm wax, ceremonial swords resting reverently on simple wooden racks, and a profound silence maintained with the meticulous precision typically reserved for sacred ritual. Factually speaking, medieval seals held paramount importance for establishing authenticity, serving as indispensable instruments to confirm the validity of documents, charters, and solemn vows. Knights and monastic orders alike relied upon them as their definitive signatures, providing tangible and indisputable proof of their authority. Fringe theories suggest that certain Templar descendants in America conscientiously preserved these ancient practices, imprinting their distinctive seals not only on letters and containers holding sacred relics, but even within the very fabric of their ritualistic spaces. Mainstream historians, however, frequently dismiss these assertions, arguing that any genuinely surviving seals are unequivocally European in origin, and that any purported New World evidence is either purely coincidental or simply misinterpreted. Yet one cannot entirely disregard the intriguing pattern of subtle markings that undeniably echo centuries-old European traditions. The air in the clearing is redolent with the comforting scent of warm earth and the fading aroma of pine, punctuated by the sharp, metallic tang of rusted iron. Perhaps swords were ceremoniously placed here during ancient rites, either as integral components of the ritual itself or simply as cherished keepsakes. The edges of these imagined blades are worn smooth, dulled by the relentless passage of time and extensive use, their once gleaming shine now faded to a muted luster. Yet, despite their aged appearance, they retain an undeniable aura of authority, an intrinsic power that speaks of their distinguished origin. Some of these implements may have served intensely practical purposes, while others were purely symbolic, representing a potent fusion of protection and devotion, where the martial and the mystical were inextricably entwined. A thread of humor subtly weaves its way through this imagery. One can readily envision a knight meticulously polishing a sword with the utmost solemnity, only for a curious, impish fox to suddenly snatch a discarded leather glove, igniting a comical chase across the clearing that perfectly blends the gravitas of ceremony with the absurdity of farce. Even the most dedicated guardians of sacred rites were ultimately at the mercy of the unpredictable whims of animals, the caprices of weather, and the inherent folly of human nature. History, it often seems, possesses an equally keen appreciation for irony. Some scholars continue to debate whether the mere presence of European-style swords in early colonial contexts necessarily implies a direct Templar influence. Others, finding themselves genuinely intrigued, point to peculiar and deliberate arrangements, weapons positioned in precise circles, or the spacing of various markers echoing distinct patterns from the Old World. Fringe theorists propose that these specific placements were not arbitrary, but constituted a form of symbolic cartography, silently conveying messages of ownership, profound devotion, or a persistent, unbroken lineage. Whether certain emblems manifest as deliberate signals or merely arise by chance, their presence invariably incites a profound sense of inquiry and piques our inherent human curiosity. Seals, those unassuming imprints, possess a silent yet formidable authority. When pressed into yielding wax, these delicate impressions eloquently convey notions of official power, individual identity, and the safeguarding of profound secrets, each ridge and valley speaking volumes. One's mind might readily conjure the image of an ancient coffer, its contents long undisturbed. The wax seals, though fractured and brittle from the relentless march of time, remain astonishingly legible, eventually yielding their grip centuries later to unveil a meticulously preserved chronicle of solemn vows, significant names, and knowledge intentionally kept from public view. The subtle fragrance of hardened wax, combined with the faint aromatic whisper of pine resin, intertwines within our collective imagination, forming a potent sensory link to the hands that toiled in hushed dedication, ensuring the unbroken continuation of a lineage or tradition. And yet, a poignant irony stubbornly persists. These very knights and their progeny, once widely accused of orchestrating vast clandestine conspiracies across the European continent, now operate with such an ingrained and comprehensive modesty that their identifying symbols seamlessly merge into the surrounding environment, becoming virtually indistinguishable. A weathered sword, a distinctive seal, a barely discernible footprint. Each is a seemingly insignificant detail, frequently overlooked, yet charged with an extraordinary depth of meaning and historical resonance. Indeed, even the most illustrious and dramatic of heritages can find its enduring survival not through ostentatious display, but through profound self-restraint, through understated gestures, and through a powerful, resonant silence that ultimately communicates far more eloquently than any boisterous public proclamation. We instinctively withdraw our focus, allowing ourselves to be enveloped by the gentle rustle of the wind as it sweeps through the leaves, conjuring spectral echoes of ancestral voices and the ethereal imprint of wax and steel. Within their meticulously cultivated quietude, the Templars, relegated to obscurity, geographically dispersed, yet remarkably preserved, impart a timeless lesson that true endurance sometimes relies less on overt bravado than on a nuanced subtlety. The most profound secrets, it seems, thrive best when they border on the imperceptible. As the day's golden light recedes and twilight deepens its embrace, our meandering path gracefully leads us into a secluded glade, where a myriad of wildflowers delicately sway in the soft, caressing evening breeze, and the ambient air is richly imbued with the sweet, almost intoxicating perfume of blooming jasmine. Here, within this tranquil sanctuary, our imagination paints the vision of a solitary figure, resplendent in garments of white and gold, a bride, not of a matrimonial union, but of sacred ritual and an ancient legacy. She kneels with profound reverence upon the yielding earth, her slender hands carefully tracing intricate symbols etched into the soil, her eyes humbly lowered in deep veneration to a line of descent that inherently carries far greater historical weight and significance than any earthly crown. Historically, certain ceremonial practices within European Templar traditions occasionally incorporated symbolic rites specifically designed to invoke divine protection, ensure the continuity of their order, and sanctify the purity of their lineage. However, fringe theories provocatively suggest that such profound rites were not entirely abandoned after the order's dramatic dissolution. Instead, these esoteric practices purportedly underwent adaptation and persisted in the deepest secrecy, potentially involving women as crucial custodians of their mysteries or as symbolic figures in ways that official historical records barely acknowledge. Scholars continue to engage in rigorous debate concerning the precise role women played within the intricate web of Templar secrecy. Some contend their involvement was merely peripheral, tangential to the core operations. Others, conversely, posit that they were absolutely vital carriers of essential knowledge, particularly instrumental in safeguarding and transmitting specific family bloodlines. The glade scene is subtly perfumed by the faint, commingled scents of ancient incense and fresh wildflowers, while the waning light of a low-hanging sun filters through the interlacing branches, casting ethereal streaks of gold upon the verdant ground. She moves with an exquisite, deliberate grace, occasionally exhibiting a fleeting, almost playful lightness, as she softly whispers phrases that could be either fervent prayers or perhaps precise, arcane instructions. One might easily envision a watchful child, concealed within the deepening shadows, meticulously mimicking her every gesture with a solemn, innocent curiosity, utterly unaware that she is, in fact, rehearsing centuries-old rites specifically designed to preserve an unbroken lineage that historically stretches back to the sacred city of Jerusalem. A subtle, dry humor gently permeates our imaginative landscape. Perhaps in a moment of human imperfection, she sighs at the slight unevenness of the lines she has meticulously drawn, murmuring to herself with a wry smile, "Even God might squint at this," while a small, inquisitive bird descends to a nearby branch, tilting its head in what appears to be a gesture of mock judgment. Indeed, even the most hallowed and sacred of acts cannot entirely elude the trivial, often whimsical, observations of the mundane world. Some fringe theorists propose that symbolic marriages, such as the evocative image of the bride adorned in white and gold, were not performed as literal unions of flesh and blood, but rather as powerful allegories designed to bind together lineage, property, and a sacred trust. Mainstream historians frequently dismiss these captivating ideas as purely metaphorical constructs or fanciful speculation. Yet, the persistent recurrence of such imagery within ancient manuscripts and enduring oral traditions strongly hints at something far more profound than mere allegory. It is, perhaps, a meticulously choreographed dance of continuity, performed in the deepest silence and utmost secrecy. We vividly conjure the various textures, the delicate softness of her gown as it brushes against the verdant moss, the crisp, distinct clarity of the hand-drawn symbols etched into the yielding soil, and the subtle, lingering warmth of the sunlight that appears to caress her shoulders. Each deliberate gesture, every carefully inscribed line, serves to preserve an underlying intent, even in circumstances where verbal articulation proves impossible. Even the most seemingly insignificant acts, utterly invisible to the casual observer, carry the monumental weight of centuries of accumulated history. Irony once again whispers its presence. A figure whose very purpose is to embody sacred duty finds herself kneeling in solitary communion within a secluded forest, performing rituals whose profound significance will remain utterly incomprehensible to anyone outside her select circle. The inherent grandeur of the ceremony thus converges with the quiet absurdity of profound isolation. And yet, it is precisely this profound humility and inconspicuousness that paradoxically ensures its very survival. Some historians remain engaged in scholarly debate as to whether these ritual figures were actual historical personages or purely symbolic representations, while others, observing the meticulous transmission of specialized knowledge and specific gestures across successive generations, speculate that they served as indispensable guardians of collective memory. Within this serene glade, bathed in a captivating interplay of golden light and deepening shadow, the hushed whispers of the Templar legacy continue to resonate, carried forth through the deliberate actions of those who intimately understand that true secrecy flourishes most effectively when it remains entirely unobserved. We gently withdraw our attention, inhaling the fragrant jasmine, the visual gold, and the earthy scent of the soft ground beneath our feet. The ethereal image of the bride in white and gold slowly recedes into the encroaching shadows, leaving us with the delicate, profound realization that some legacies are preserved not within imposing monuments, but through quiet, unwavering devotion, through acts that are almost imperceptible, yet profoundly enduring. Our imaginative journey now transports us to the distant, echoing halls of power, where the hesitant flicker of candlelight struggles against the cold, unyielding stone walls, illuminating a singular figure intently bent over a piece of parchment. The Pope himself, quill poised delicately in hand, meticulously records events that may or may not have transpired, keenly aware that every word he inscribes, or indeed chooses to conspicuously omit, carries weighty consequences that extend far beyond the confines of his private chamber. An palpable sense of unease permeates this space, a pervasive feeling that certain narratives are simply too perilous, too inherently persistent to be entirely silenced or eradicated. Historically, the papacy diligently maintained meticulous records of ecclesiastical trials, extensive correspondences, and official decrees, including those pertaining to the Knights Templar. Fringe theorists, however, contend that certain entries within these records were intentionally rendered vague, subtly coded, or altogether omitted, thereby ingeniously preserving secrecy in plain sight. Scholars engage in vigorous academic discourse as to whether these notable omissions were merely administrative oversights, accidental clerical errors, or precisely calculated acts of deliberate concealment. Some argue persuasively that the very quill wielded by the scribes became an instrument of subtle diplomatic strategy, carefully balancing the precarious demands of truth, prevailing rumor, and pressing political necessity. The chamber is subtly scented by the faint aroma of fresh ink, aged parchment, and the melting wax of the flickering candles. Shadows dance and shift across the Pope's contemplative face as he hesitates perceptibly over a particular line, deeply considering whether to include any mention of sacred relics, secret oaths, or forbidden esoteric knowledge. One can vividly imagine the immense pressure, the subtle thrill, and the profound irony inherent in an authority attempting to control the flow of history with nothing more than a simple quill. Outside the imposing chamber, a brisk night breeze rattles gently against the windows, serving as an insistent reminder that the wider world continues its ceaseless motion, utterly beyond his ultimate control. A dry, ironic humor subtly surfaces in our imagination. Perhaps he sighs wearily, muttering softly to himself, "If only these troublesome nights would confine themselves to Europe," while a solitary bat flutters past the window, seemingly mocking both his profound concern and the presumed permanence of his ink. Indeed, even the highest and most absolute authority cannot entirely command or dictate the intricate flow of secrets. Fringe theories provocatively suggest that certain papal documents contain veiled hints regarding Templar descendants who successfully escaped the European continent, carrying with them invaluable relics and dangerous knowledge that, if ever fully revealed, threatened to fundamentally undermine the very foundations of ecclesiastical authority. Mainstream historians, however, largely argue that these interpretations extrapolate far too much meaning from what they consider routine bureaucratic language. Yet, the persistent whisper of rumor, of alleged coded entries, continues to invite a profound sense of wonder and speculation. Could the humble quill itself have evolved into a silent accomplice, meticulously protecting profound truths while simultaneously documenting only what was deemed safe and permissible to share with the wider world? We can almost feel the distinctive texture of the parchment beneath our fingertips, simultaneously smooth yet fragile. The delicate scratch of the quill across its surface resonates like a hushed whisper. Each individual stroke, it seems, possessed the potential to conceal as much as it revealed, subtly encoding lineage, power, and ritual in ways utterly invisible to the casual, untrained eye. The evocative smell of ink and wax lingers in the air, serving as a potent sensory reminder of the delicate and intricate art of discretion. Irony hums softly once more. The very ecclesiastical office specifically charged with the eradication of secrets may have, through its own complex methodologies, inadvertently preserved them, meticulously wrapped in layers of deliberate ambiguity. The Pope's quill, whether guided by a trembling hand or a deliberate intention, ultimately ensures that some truths manage to survive by cleverly appearing ordinary. Authority and secrecy, it profoundly seems, are inextricably entwined in an intricate, perpetual dance. Some historians continue to debate whether any specific documents intentionally concealed Templar bloodlines, while others meticulously observe subtle consistencies, recurring patterns of omission, specific phrasing, or telling marginalia that strongly hint at a deliberate, calculated choice. Within that flickering, ancient chamber, we instinctively sense the quiet genius of concealment, the inherent power of ink, and the weighty understanding that some secrets are simply too fragile, too inherently dangerous to ever be declared outright. As we gently withdraw from the imagined Vatican chamber, the candlelight gradually dims, leaving behind only the faint, lingering impression of momentous decisions made in shadow. The Pope's quill rests, uneasy and silent. And we are profoundly reminded that secrecy travels not merely through decisive action, but equally through careful inaction, through the artful, deliberate decision of precisely what to commit to writing and what to meticulously leave unsaid. The brisk wind now carries a distinct, salty tang as we find ourselves standing precariously on the cliff's precipitous edge, our gaze fixed upon the expansive horizon, where the boundless ocean stretches far beyond the known limits of any charted map. Here, the very edge of the known world is not merely a definitive line, but rather a profound promise, a mythical threshold where intrepid explorers and desperate exiles alike dared to set sail, carrying with them invaluable stories, sacred relics, and precious bloodlines deemed either too valuable or too perilous to abandon. Factually speaking, European maps produced during the 15th and 16th centuries frequently depicted vast, uncharted swaths of the Atlantic Ocean as blank spaces, often ominously marked with illustrations of dragons, menacing sea monsters, or simple, stark warnings such as, "Here be nothing." Fringe theories, however, provocatively suggest that Templar descendants may have strategically exploited these uncharted edges to conceal their clandestine voyages, discreetly transporting invaluable treasures and crucial documents to lands not yet officially charted, thereby ingeniously establishing secret networks that spanned entire continents. Some historians, however, maintain their skepticism, positing that the numerous unfilled gaps in historical records more frequently signify a lack of comprehensive understanding rather than any deliberate act of obfuscation. Nevertheless, the captivating allure of what might be possible continues to exert a powerful hold on the imagination. The pungent aroma of saline air commingles intimately with the earthy dampness emanating from ancient wooden piers, while the piercing cries of gulls punctuate the ceaseless rhythmic crash of ocean waves against the unyielding coastal rocks. One is compelled to envision vessels, modest in size yet remarkably agile, gracefully ascending and descending with the ocean swells beneath the vast expanse of a starlit sky. Their holds, it is imagined, were not merely laden with precious metals, but also with invaluable sacred knowledge, Conceivably, a sturdy wooden chest, meticulously sealed with wax and adorned with enigmatic etched symbols, reposed discreetly amidst barrels of mundane provisions. Meanwhile, a dedicated navigator, with an intense gaze fixed upon the celestial bodies, meticulously charted a course specifically designed to remain entirely imperceptible to those who were not initiated into its profound mysteries. A gentle current of humor subtly permeates this imagined scene. One can readily picture a grizzled captain, his voice a low growl admonishing, "Watch the compass, or we'll deliver the entire bloodline to the hungry sharks," just as an unexpected gust of wind playfully dislodges his hat. It appears that even the most gravely important endeavors, those cloaked in the deepest secrecy, remain perpetually vulnerable to the capricious whims of the wind, the relentless power of the waves, and the sheer unpredictability of improbable accidents. Indeed, the grand sweep of history, much like the boundless and ever-changing sea, possesses a distinct fondness for the ironic twist of fate. Certain unconventional accounts assert that fleets, supposedly descended from the Knights Templar, managed to reach the shores of the Americas long before the momentous arrival of Columbus, establishing clandestine enclaves along the continent's most remote and secluded coastlines. Esteemed mainstream historians, predictably, dismiss these conjectures as utterly fanciful, yet the discovery of peculiar artifacts, the presence of unusually crafted masonry, and persistent local legends collectively conspire to keep this intriguing discussion vigorously alive. Scholarly circles engage in fervent debate regarding the existence of any truly tangible or irrefutable proof, while the creative minds of storytellers find fertile ground, flourishing within the compelling tension that exists between what has been meticulously documented and what tantalizingly might have transpired. We intuitively perceive the rich array of textures, the abrasive feel of rough rope against hands hardened by time and toil, the resonant creak of aged timbers, and the invigorating sting of the salt-laden breeze, each minute detail seeming to whisper tales of profound secrecy, of unyielding endurance, and of a courage born from careful calculation. These maritime vessels were far more than mere conveyances. They functioned as veritable vaults, entrusted with the weighty responsibility of transporting an invaluable heritage across the perilous and unpredictable waters of historical progression. Irony once again manifests itself with striking clarity. The Templars, an order once renowned for their formidable monumental fortresses, were now, in this speculative narrative, reduced to relying upon fragile wooden ships, entirely at the mercy of the vast, unforgiving ocean. Yet paradoxically, these humble vessels may have offered a greater sanctuary than any impregnable stone keep in Europe. The very furthest reaches of the known world thus transformed into a sacred refuge for that which absolutely had to remain unseen, for precious bloodlines, and for secrets far too delicate and vulnerable to withstand the harsh scrutiny of powerful courts and autocratic kings. We observe in our mind's eye as the distant horizon blurs indistinctly into the deepening twilight, envisioning these phantom vessels slipping silently beyond the reach of sight, beyond the confines of any known map, receding into a segment of history almost entirely obliterated, yet miraculously preserved in hushed whispers. Somewhere, across the vast expanse of oceanic waves and the immeasurable stretch of centuries, these legacies continue their quiet, unobtrusive existence, carefully concealed at the fringes of documented knowledge, diligently carried forward by individuals who intrinsically understood the profound value of discretion and the enduring power of secrecy. Our journey continues as we tread lightly through a remarkably dense forest, the earth yielding softly beneath our boots, a thick carpet of moss cushioning each deliberate, careful stride. The very air itself is rich and heavy with the unmistakable aroma of pine, the deep scent of damp earth, and the faint, refreshing promise of distant rain. Here, in this uncharted wilderness, where no established path is delineated on maps and no human settlement is formally recorded in official histories, we discern and follow the subtle, faint impressions of footsteps that speak of deliberate intent, of cautious movement, and of an elusive presence that, despite time, proved impossible to erase completely. These barely perceptible marks are, in essence, the silent yet irrefutable testament to those who arrived bearing profound knowledge, unwavering intent, and crucial secrets they simply could not afford to abandon. Historically, it is well established that European settlers and explorers did indeed leave behind discernible physical traces, rudimentary pathways, cleared areas for encampments or agriculture, and basic roads laboriously carved through the often impenetrable density of the primeval forests. However, certain fringe theories propose a more intriguing possibility: that some of these very paths were meticulously and deliberately engineered by descendants of the Templars. Their purpose, it is suggested, was to clandestinely connect hidden sites, secluded chapels, secret vaults, and sacred ritual spaces, thereby forming a subtle, interwoven network of guidance across the untamed expanse of the New World. Mainstream scholars, for their part, remain largely unconvinced and deeply divided, frequently arguing that the available evidence is, at best, circumstantial. Yet the persistent and often striking alignment of specific clearings, enigmatic stone markers, and natural forest openings continues, without fail, to ignite a deep sense of curiosity and speculation. We perceive the delicate whisper of fallen leaves underfoot, the distinct creak of an unseen branch swaying overhead, and perhaps the faint, distant splash of a river's surface momentarily disturbed by the passage of a solitary fish. These ambient sounds coalesce to form a natural rhythm, a spontaneous, organic music that guides and inspires our imagination with as much potency as any meticulously drawn map. One can envision, centuries ago, a cloaked figure treading this very same path, carrying with them an object of immense, untold importance, pausing only intermittently to ensure that no casual or unsuspecting observer became aware of their clandestine presence. A touch of gentle humor delicately infuses our mental tableau. We might imagine a knight, momentarily breaking his solemn stride, adjusting the folds of his heavy cloak, or perhaps muttering an exasperated complaint at a particularly stubborn root that impedes his progress. All while an observant raccoon watches the scene unfold with an air of remarkably keen judgment. It seems that even the most meticulously formulated plans, no matter how serious their intent, are perpetually challenged by the whimsical yet persistent forces of nature. Some fringe scholars ardently contend that these ancient forest paths exhibit alignments with celestial markers, subtly echoing the sophisticated geometry of the Old World. In stark contrast, mainstream historians steadfastly insist that any such arrangements are purely coincidental or simply the result of natural formations. Nevertheless, the discernible precision, the inherent subtlety, and the obvious care evident in these formations strongly suggest an underlying intention, hinting at a hidden order meticulously woven beneath the seemingly chaotic tapestry of the wilderness. The tactile sensation of rough bark, the cool, pervasive dampness of the rich soil, and the occasional, fleeting scratch of a stray twig against one's hands, all serve as poignant reminders of past presence and the enduring act of passage. The footsteps themselves are both literal and profoundly symbolic, serving as tangible evidence of actual travel while simultaneously representing the metaphorical imprint of enduring lineage and sacred ritual, spanning vast continents and countless centuries. Irony continues to resonate quietly within this profound solitude. The very descendants of an order once celebrated for their imposing fortresses and formidable strongholds now find themselves relying entirely upon discretion, the protective embrace of the wilderness, and the ephemeral nature of impermanence for their survival and the preservation of their secrets. True strength, it appears, endures not through the solidity of stone walls, but through the power of invisibility, the virtue of patience, and the careful, almost imperceptible echo of footsteps. We collectively pause, listening intently to the forest's own hushed whispers, imagining the myriad secrets it faithfully guards, the hidden journeys it has witnessed, the silent guardians who once walked its paths, and the ancient bloodlines that continue to move, unseen, within its depths. In every subtle impression left upon the earth, in every careful and deliberate alignment of ancient stones, the Templars' legacy continues to whisper still, a soft yet enduring testimony to the profound art of survival, the quiet power of discretion, and the unwavering strength of silent devotion. Finally, our journey culminates upon a hilltop where ancient stones majestically emerge from the earth, standing like silent, immutable witnesses to the passage of countless centuries. Each individual rock seems to bear its own unique narrative. Some are intricately etched with symbols so faint as to be almost imperceptible, while others have been meticulously shaped by hands that vanished into history long ago. Here, the very landscape itself articulates a profound language, a dialect far older than any spoken words, a complex script composed of shifting shadows, precise angles, and varied, evocative textures. We instinctively trace our fingers along the worn carvings, feeling the deep grooves that have been smoothed over millennia by the relentless action of wind, the persistent erosion of rain, and the occasional fleeting touch of a curious hand. Factually speaking, a diverse array of Native American and early colonial stone arrangements can be found scattered across the Americas, ranging from simple, unadorned cairns to remarkably intricate geometric alignments. Fringe theories, however, boldly propose that some of these sites exhibit clear signs of influence from Templar descendants, who, it is suggested, deliberately embedded European esoteric symbols alongside existing indigenous forms, creating a unique cultural syncretism. Mainstream scholars, predictably, maintain a stance of skepticism, frequently citing the high probability of mere coincidence or the likelihood of independent cultural development. Yet the observed patterns are undeniably tantalizing. The deliberate placement of stars, crosses, and circles in specific, meaningful relations, together forming what appears to be a cryptic vocabulary of the hidden. The air on the hilltop is redolent with the warm scent of sun-baked rock, the earthy fragrance of moss, and the pervasive aroma of dry earth. A gentle, caressing breeze carries the faint, distant calls of birds, creating a soft, ever-shifting soundtrack as our gaze moves thoughtfully from one ancient stone to another. Perhaps, for those discerning enough to truly notice, a profound, hidden message still awaits discovery, a subtle mark of a long-lost bloodline, a mnemonic device designed to aid in ritual, or a whispered secret echoing across the vast chasm of centuries. One can readily imagine Templars kneeling reverently here, their hands pressed firmly against the cool stone, murmuring solemn oaths that served simultaneously as both profound promises and heartfelt prayers. A touch of gentle humor subtly threads its way through this solemn scene. We might, for instance, envision an impatient apprentice, momentarily tapping a slightly misaligned stone and grumbling under his breath. Even God himself would have corrected that. All while a nearby squirrel observes his antics with an air of apparent disapproval. In this timeless setting, the sacred and the trivial coexist in a delicate and perfect harmony. Some fringe theorists further suggest that these stone alignments meticulously encode complex astronomical knowledge, precise dates, or the exact locations of other hidden sites, an ancient, old-world practice expertly adapted and carried over to the New World. Mainstream historians, in their characteristic caution, advise against overinterpretation, carefully pointing out that natural geological formations and purely practical arrangements often inadvertently create patterns that merely appear to be deliberate. Yet despite this scholarly caution, there is an undeniable, strange resonance here. The sense of intentionality feels almost palpable, suggesting a profound, enduring dialogue between the skilled hands of ancient humans and the unyielding, enduring rock itself. Tactile sensations dominate our perception. The rough, unyielding texture of granite, the smooth, cool surface of limestone, and the occasional, surprising softness of moss beneath our fingertips. Shadows lengthen and shift with the sun's slow descent, and subtle angles align themselves with distant mountain peaks, winding rivers, or specific celestial markers, creating a dynamic interplay of light and form. Each individual stone functions as a single word. Each intricate alignment forms a complete sentence, and together they compose an elaborate manuscript written not on fragile parchment, but in the enduring, permanent medium of the earth and the vast, overarching sky. Irony quietly lingers in this profound setting. The grand, sweeping narratives of conquest, of heroic discovery, and of vast empires seem to pale into insignificance when contrasted with the patient, unyielding endurance of these ancient stones. Secrets, it is clear, are not loudly proclaimed. Instead, they are meticulously pressed into surfaces, subtle to the point of being almost invisible, patiently awaiting the perceptive eyes that can notice them without any need for overt declaration. Some historians continue to vigorously debate whether any European influence whatsoever existed at these sites, while others observe parallels that appear far too deliberate and precise to be simply dismissed as mere coincidence. Perhaps in this context, intention holds greater significance than irrefutable proof. The powerful idea that secrecy, unwavering devotion, and profound knowledge can, indeed, endure quietly, almost imperceptibly, across immense stretches of time and challenging terrain. We consciously step back, allowing the serene hilltop and its silent, ancient stones to gently settle into the chambers of our memory. The light begins to fade, shadows stretch long and thin across the landscape, and a soft, profound hush descends over the entire scene. In the intricate grooves, the precise angles, and the enduring, silent presence of these stones, the Templars' whispers persist, carried forward into eternity in the timeless, enduring language of stone. Night has now fully enveloped the valleys, the meandering rivers, and the rolling hills we have so recently traversed, and the entire world seems to exhale a soft, deep, collective breath. We find ourselves seated together on the gentle, welcoming slope of a tranquil meadow. Above us, the stars are scattered across the inky canvas of the sky like countless shimmering coins of burnished silver. Each individual star serves as a quiet, luminous reminder of the immeasurable vastness that cradles and protects all secrets. The air is cool and crisp, faintly scented with the earthy aroma of pine, the rich fragrance of damp soil, and the subtle, enchanting sweetness of nocturnal blooms that, in their delicate mystery, unfurl and open their petals only under the soft, ethereal glow of the moonlight. Each ambient sound, the delicate rustling of unseen foliage, the remote, muffled splash of a hidden stream, the soft sibilance of air currents caressing ancient rock formations, transforms into a soothing serenade, a tender, almost ethereal soundtrack to the intricate narratives and clandestine histories that have been meticulously uncovered and considered throughout the evening's journey of contemplation. One's collective memory drifts back to the unchristened chapel, a humble sanctuary veiled in anonymity, where the interplay of deep shadows and flickering candlelight served as a hushed, unblinking sentinel to a venerable lineage, carefully safeguarded and immortalized within the unpretentious confines of its timbered structure, hinting at profound secrets held close. The mind's eye conjures the enigmatic rose line, an unseen meridian of profound significance, extending its subtle influence across vast continental expanses, subtly directing the purposeful strides of both mortal explorers and spectral presences, thereby forging an indelible mystical connection between the ancient lands of Europe and the nascent territories of the New World. Subterranean vaults concealed beneath the undulating contours of hills, intricate seals meticulously pressed into hardened wax, ceremonial swords positioned with profound, deliberate stillness, and the ethereal vision of a bride adorned in resplendent white and shimmering gold. These potent symbols now resonate, not as audible clamor, but within the profound stillness of the mind's eye, manifesting as a gentle, persistent vibration of recollection that gracefully endures long after the world has fully succumbed to slumber. The boundless expanse of the ocean, extending far beyond the charted territories of conventional cartography, the concealed meandering pathways of unseen rivers, and the meticulously placed, almost imperceptible footprints left within the dense undergrowth of the forest. Each of these elements eloquently communicates a profound narrative of unwavering patience, intricate subtlety, and enduring resilience. Even the image of the Pope's formidable quill, poised with an air of palpable unease yet guided by deliberate precision, serves as a potent reminder that certain profound narratives are meticulously safeguarded and transmitted not through exhaustive exposition, but rather through the judicious exercise of restraint, through the sagacious discernment of precisely what to commit to parchment, and crucially, what profound truths to allow to remain cloaked in eloquent silence. The enduring legacy attributed to the Knights Templar, a narrative often shrouded in mystery, is unequivocally not quantifiable by grand architectural monuments or ostentatious displays of power. but rather by the delicate currency of hushed whispers, the elusive dance of shadows, and the steadfast, unspoken devotion that has, with remarkable tenacity, traversed the vast chasm of countless centuries. A vivid mental image arises of meticulously deciphering the ancient, silent language inscribed upon stone for a final contemplative moment. Imaginary fingertips gently traverse the intricate network of grooves, meticulously smoothed and refined by the ceaseless caress of wind and the persistent erosion of rain, passing over enigmatic carvings that communicate profound messages through the precise articulation of geometry, the interplay of light and profound shadow, and the tactile richness of varied texture. Every deliberate alignment, each subtle etched mark upon these ancient surfaces, functions as a singular word, a cryptic phrase, or an entire profound message, meticulously crafted and intended not for the casual gaze of the multitude, but exclusively for the discerning, acutely observant few who possess the innate capacity to truly perceive and comprehend. A gentle, almost imperceptible current of humor subtly permeates the contemplative reverie. The fleeting image of a nimble squirrel, the stealthy passage of a cunning fox, or the sudden playful gust of an errant wind, each of these natural phenomena quietly, yet effectively, interrupts the prevailing solemnity of such reflections, serving as a poignant reminder that even the most hallowed and deeply entrenched traditions must inevitably contend with and gracefully accommodate the inherent, gentle absurdities and unpredictable whims of daily existence. And now, as the eyelids gently descend, the intricate, delicate threads of documented history, captivating legend, and boundless imagination seamlessly intertwine and coalesce into a unified tapestry. A palpable sense of connection emerges, allowing one to discern the ethereal presence of the silent keepers of ancient lore, the clandestine voyagers who navigated unseen paths, and the steadfast guardians entrusted with the safekeeping of invaluable relics and sacred oaths. Their faint, almost inaudible whispers gently settle into receptive ears, much like a comforting lullaby, imparting profound wisdom and teaching with quiet conviction that unwavering patience, judicious discretion, and a profound, unspoken reverence truly constitute the most authentic and robust vessels for the enduring transmission of knowledge and spirit across the ages. The annals of the past are not, in any genuine sense, irrevocably lost or irretrievably vanished. Rather, history persistently lingers, residing within the enigmatic depths of shadowed corners, manifesting in the precise, subtle alignments of ancient structures, and embedded within the very essence of venerable stone and fertile soil, patiently awaiting the awakening of truly attentive and perceptive hearts to discern its enduring presence. The entire world appears to draw a measured, profound breath once more, exhaling with a deeper, more deliberate rhythm. One's own respirations unconsciously synchronize with the tranquil cadence of the night, mirroring the gentle, elemental pulse that emanates from the earth, the flowing waters, and the caressing wind. Profound secrets, it becomes clear, steadfastly survive within the protective embrace of silence. Intricate stories journey and propagate through the delicate medium of hushed whispers, and ancient bloodlines persist and thrive not through flamboyant spectacle or overt display, but rather through meticulous care, profound subtlety, and an unwavering devotion that, by its very nature, never seeks or demands external acclaim or applause. As this contemplative night draws to a close, these invaluable lessons are carefully internalized, cradled within the tender, receptive fold of imagination, permitting them to envelop one with the comforting embrace of a warm, protective blanket. A covering rich and heavy with the weight of ancient memories, yet simultaneously imbued with the ethereal lightness of fresh wonder. The profound solace of sleep now steadily approaches, bearing with it the lingering echo of unseen footsteps, the soft, continuous murmur of distant rivers, the profound hush that pervades subterranean vaults, and the gentle, resonant hum emanating from both venerable stones and distant celestial stars. Therefore, let consciousness gently disengage and freely drift along those concealed, enigmatic pathways, navigating through the solemn stillness of shadowed chapels, traversing the elusive currents of rivers that remain unseen by the waking eye, and ultimately immersing itself within the profound, quiet wisdom of a history that has been so tenderly and softly whispered into the deep embrace of the fading night.